whatever time it is, wherever you are. This is 2 on 1, the weekly talk show about theology and pop culture, hosted by myself, the Reverend Arthur Stewart, and my co-host, the Reverend Stephanie Kendall. Hello, Stephanie. How are you today?
I'm well, Arthur. How are you today?
I'm fine and dandy. I thank you for asking.
I wanted to also name, because I know that this is a new thing for our viewers, but so we are a talk show, but we are also a podcast.
We're a podcast?
We are a podcast available on Apple Podcast and Spotify, who is now has a new host of Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. So we're just adjacent to royalty this week. So.
Wait, Meghan Markle is going to do a podcast on Spotify?
They just signed a new deal with Spotify, and we are also on Spotify. So
basically we're in the royal succession.
So we're just here, we're just making friends, right? Okay. We got digital friends everywhere. So but just as a reminder for those of you out there that maybe don't think to tune into Facebook every week, which we understand because it's right in the middle of the day, you can get our podcast anytime. They go up every Wednesday, just like our show does. So
it is great for if you're running on an elliptical, or if you're baking in the kitchen, or if you're stuck in traffic. Speaking of baking,
so we're talking about the Great British Baking Show Holiday Edition today. And look at me, I am wearing my apron for the occasion.
Is that apron from Jeff Wunrow Designs?
Aprons are not liturgical textiles, my friend.
They are not liturgical textiles yet, my friend.
Ooh, that's true. Jeff Wunrow Designs has become a well-established maker of processional banners and seasonal banners, as well as frontals and paraments and stoles and chostables.
Don't forget copes.
Oh, and copes. I love me a good cope. And now Jeff Wunrow Designs is innovative in offering liturgical face masks, which is a phrase that would have seemed insane a year ago, but makes perfect sense today.
And if you haven't seen these liturgical face mask designs, you can get a chalice or a Methodist or Episcopal or Presbyterian logo or a protest fist embroidered. Speaking of weird phrases a year ago.
Absolutely. Jeff Wunrow Designs has spent the last 15 years making ordinary time extraordinary, and there is no end in sight.
So if you're shopping for the smallest altar accessory or reevaluating your entire collection of vestments and paraments, Jeff Wunrow Designs would be honored to work with you to create something perfect for you.
Arthur, do you think that they'd make me an apron?
If they will, I want one as well. You can visit jeffwunrow.com for a catalog of stoles, vestments, paraments, and banners, along with ordering information and customization possibilities at jeffwunrow.com.
Oh, you're so good at that. And there's a special promo for our viewers, which is 2 on 1, all one word, for 15% off stoles through the end of the year. It is the premier code that is out there right now. It's the best deal that you can get for Jeff Wunrow. And it's all because of you making this podcast and talk show a success. So, and he is a wonderful contributor to all that we do.
Really is. So we thank Jeff Wunrow Designs for being our lead sponsor. These stoles still steal the show. jeffwunrow.com.
I love that. I love your last line of that. I think that's so fun.
Well, I'm hoping that he's like, can I use these stoles still steal the show? Because I'm proud of that. And I will say yes in return for liturgical face masks. See, it's
reciprocal.
Quid pro stole.
I like it. I mean, I'm here for it.
All right. I'm going to bring in our guest. Cara Gilger is our guest today, the Reverend Cara Gilger. And she's coming in from the green room now. Maybe. There she is.
Hooray!
Hello,
hey.
Cara.
Hi, welcome back.
All right. So, Cara, what are you doing here, and what are you doing when you're not here?
Well, I'm here to talk about the Great British Baking Show Holiday Edition, because it's Joy Sunday week, and there's nothing more joyful than British people baking civilly.
Also, it's pastry week.
Oh, good. Love that. So that's what I'm doing here. And when I'm not here, I am juggling pandemic parenting with writing a book on how the church can more expansively understand trauma and minister to families. So that's why I'm seeking out joy in my television watching, because my research and writing is heavy stuff, right?
It is. And I'm going to plug something for you. You write an incredible newsletter and it goes out. And so where can people find that newsletter? Because it brings me joy to read it.
I have a twice a month newsletter because I try not to be spammy, and you can sign up for that on my website, which is caragilger.com. There's a spot to do that at the bottom of every page and then over on the blog. So, and I blog there as well.
Excellent.
It is fantastic. So,
yeah.
Well, thank you for coming back. You are always a guest, and we mean it when we say that when we tell people you have an open invitation to come back. We hope they take us up on it. You have done so, and we are so excited to have you here and talk Great British Baking Show, because I love the Great British Baking Show.
So for the uninitiated, which would shock me, I bet you 10 to 1, like our viewers and people who have seen the Great British Baking Show are one circle in a Venn diagram. But for the uninitiated, it's a baking show based in Britain where people come in on the weekends and they've already been told what they're going to make for the first one. Not the technical. Is that the technical? No.
The technical is the second.
Yeah, it goes challenge, technical, showstopper.
So they know what they're doing for the challenge and they've had time to prepare and they're given a reasonable amount of time. It's a challenge, but it's not like you have 45 minutes to remake this enormous cake. And they're nice to each other and it's great. And this is the holiday edition of it.
Yeah, in the holiday edition, I really appreciate how they, at least in the show, they've been taking their quarantining very seriously and intentionally. And it seems like at least that this group of bakers the holiday edition, they're bringing back favorite bakers. And so that's really fun to kind of get to relive some of the people that you journey with through the original seasons. And like this holiday gift is that there are some of our, favorite people. And what I really like about it is they're not bringing back the people that, well, I guess I don't have any people that I don't like on that show. I'll just be really honest. I think it's a show of really lovely people. It's not like other reality shows where there's they pit someone as like kind of the villain or there's roles to fill. These really are just people showing up as themselves with their gifts and kind of trying to be their best.
Yeah, I appreciate. Go ahead, Arthur.
No, you are.
I appreciate that for the holiday ones, they don't bring back the champions, they bring back the middling contestants. And so there's like this really cute sense of redemption for some of them, where they're like, I really screwed up this one thing and got, voted off in my season. And so I'm here to win the holiday challenge. And I find that so endearing. Maybe it's the second chance, maybe it's the redemption. Maybe I like seeing them mess up again a little bit, but
also this leads into the first question, because I'm going from like the general to the specific. That's
Okay.
kind of my thing today. And I think this is I don't think we're going to parse episodes, but perhaps we are. But so there was a Great American Baking Show. They attempted it in the United States and it did not work because we're so conflict driven and we expect a villain and the redemption and the editing's got to set up who's going to fail so we feel smart. Remind me to tell you about our rules for Chopped because we broke the code. It's the American Baking Show didn't work and the Great British Baking Show does. So if we're talking about Reign of God, and I mean with American audiences, the Great British Baking Show connects in a way. The Great British Baking Show is not our culture.
mm-hmm.
It is a preview of a world that we literally cannot participate in fully.
Mm-hmm.
What elements translate into the reign of God? Like, what should we be expecting? What can the church learn from the way the Great British Baking Show engages us?
I have found it really interesting that in like COVID quarantine times, a lot of my friends that wouldn't watch that show have like picked up, not only the original, but the holidays and like really connected with it. And I think it's kind of because it's so civil, right? It's got that British civility to it, that it does offer like an alternate understanding of like what reality TV can be, what baking shows can be. As far as the reign of God, I think what I appreciate is even though it is individualistic and that appeals to the American narrative, they help each other.
They help each other.
I'm like, what are you doing at their station? And I'm like, oh, that's so cute. You're helping. And then you go to another station and help. And like, it's just lovely.
They're not sabotaging. There's not any ominous music. It's
I like that there's something, it almost feels so, in the kind of showcase of reality television, this feels the most real to me because one, sometimes they randomly will swear and slip it, and it just feels human. It feels like I don't know, if I see someone struggling that we've all put some real time into, I'm going to go help them. You know what I mean? That the setup of the natural world in which we engage each other with is not one of competition at its best. And so that's a look, Arthur.
It is a look. I want to talk about competition, competitive one.
Don't get me wrong. I fully believe in competition and competitiveness. I love it. It's in my core. But it is not what drives my interactions with people. It is not what drives my vision of the kingdom is not one in which I'm in perpetual competition. Yes.
No, I'm sorry. I'm cutting everybody off today without trying to. Excuse me. I'm so excited.
No, you're right. We've been itching to talk about, some cooking shows for a while too. So
good. Yeah.
This is our first
topped with us.
Yeah. Yes. But for me, I just, there's something really human and really, I don't know. That's why I buy into the life of these people and and that this show really does bring home to me, what it means. Like, I'm not near my family right now, and my family is watching, so hi. But that I don't get to go home, but I feel like I know these people. I feel like I am baking with them because there is this kind of humanness there that it's not performative. I
feel like the competition is secondary.
Yeah.
To the baking, to the what you are making and bringing into the world. I think the competition is secondary to the relational aspect. And I mean, I'm a huge James K. Smith fan. And so, I kind of frame it in terms of that the love of competition isn't primary in how they've shaped the show. It's this love of baking, really. I mean, because they're all amateurs.
That's the other thing. Yeah.
None of them are trying to a few of them have open bake shops. Most of them are software engineers that like to bake every day when they come home. And
Martha
I think
from series 3 or 4, the college kid who is just,
And so I think the fact that the competition aspect of the show just falls so shockingly low in the purpose of the show or the ethos of the show. There are so many things that come before that kind of shape the trajectory of the show.
And there's multiple.
I mean, they have judges. I'm not saying there's no competition there.
No, but there's multiple levels of winning, right? And they're supportive of each other. That the challenge, there's something there, whoever wins, and it's okay, moving on, and that's great. And they're all really supportive and loving. That I think you've named it, that it's secondary, and that is so.
Yeah, which I can't remember which holiday episode it was, but the guy that won the technical had not been good at technicals before, and everybody was so excited when they announced his name, and they were all and patting him on the back because they knew what a big deal that was for him, that was a growth area for him. And even sweeter.
The ethos of the show too is, in the regular season, the winner gets flowers and a cake plate. They have a big party and all of the previous contestants show up, and it's not the worst thing in the world. It's actually just this little county fair. And that's
I love that too. And I will say we were originally nailed it, people, because we can watch that with our younger kids. And I just, the first few times I watched the Bake Off and they didn't, when someone won, I was like, where's the cash gun? And I'm that is so I feel like that is the epitome of the contrast between American cooking shows and the Great British Baking Show, because there's no monetary incentive, and it's not wild. And robust, right? Or like obnoxious.
I'm not fighting you for $10,000. I'm working alongside you because we're doing the best we can together.
Yeah. And that's kingdom framing, right?
That's kingdom framing. I will also say, within the holiday episodes, I appreciate how seriously they don't take themselves. The judges won't throw into their, like, oh, you ran out of time. That's never happened before. And they laugh about it. Yep. Oops. Like it's breezy. It's wearing life like a loose garment.
Because there's already relationship there. Like that is kind of one of the things that was a hidden delight in the holiday one, is that
we just lost Spiff. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right.
Yeah, make sure she can rejoin us when she does. One of the hidden delights, excuse me.
Oh, yeah. So one of the hidden delights, I think, in the holiday episodes was that there was a relationship that preceded the episode. And so even the judges seemed jovial in terms of like, oh, you're still bad at this. Or, oh, look, you went home and mastered this skill. That was there was ribbing and there was fun. And
so
yeah.
We talk about judgment then, because that was one of my questions. That's always my question when there are judges. Mm-hmm. Does this convey a sense of how God will judge? Is this judgment out of grace, or is this judgment out of love? Or is it the same thing?
I think there's a distinction, like between Paul and Prue and how they judge. And I think it really kind of depends. I think in the holiday episodes, they're much more gracious. Right? Because they're not pushing them to be progressively better from episode to episode, like in the main season.
Yes.
Like, oh, you need this feedback so that you don't make this mistake in future seasons, right? Or in future episodes. But in the holiday one, there doesn't seem to be that same press in terms of feedback.
So it's just a matter of getting a little tipsy and having a fun time and baking for friends.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
So are we called to get progressive?
The episodes where they get a little tipsy are funnier.
Mm-hmm. Sure. My apologies for I don't know what happened, but I switched computers and here's hoping I'm back. I'm back.
It's now 2-on-1.
It's my it's my second chance. It's my second chance at the bake. So
so this is my first real engagement with the new hosts and with Prue. Mm-hmm. I struggled a little bit. You know what? I'm going to bring this up later. Spiff, would you please ask a question? I feel like I could talk about theological concepts in terms of baking forever. And I don't want to hog Cara.
I mean, I'm sure. I was really, so originally when we were talking about this, I was like, let's shy away from the Dairy Girls episode, because I think the Dairy Girls episode, I think Dairy Girls as a show, and those characters in and of themselves need their own 2-on-1. So if you were someone that watches Dairy Girls, hit me up. But
yes,
I watched it and am now a fan of their show, and I think we can't do a holiday episode of Great British Baking Show without naming that this is one of those 2 episodes, because the holiday edition of this show only does 2 it's only 2 episodes a season. And one of them for this season is this Dairy Girls episode. And for me, I was like, what a treat. That they're just funny and engaged. But also I was like, well, what are we then to maybe take from this, if we kind of couch it in the theological, about giving our platforms to other people's gifts, right? Like that these aren't the bakers, these aren't the people that we know and love, and yet they come into the fold, they come into the setup that we understand, and we kind of let them run free. And I was like, there's something in there for me about what does it mean to kind of abdicate some of our traditional understandings of church, our traditional roles, the leaders that hold those roles, and give them to new spaces. What does that
question?
I think that's interesting, because what I found interesting is that the Dairy Girls that came in that did bake and had high expectations that they were going to impress Prue or Paul did terribly. Yeah. And the ones that were like, I don't even know where my kitchen is in my flat, did really well. And I think if you're thinking about that in terms of like the church, I think sometimes we hand power and opportunity over to people that we presume have gifts that don't necessarily fit or don't necessarily shine in that context, while often overlooking people that are like, church what? You know, because some of my greatest like evangelists for the church are people that are like brand new. They haven't read their Bible straight through. They don't, you know, they just showed up in this community and have fallen in love, and they're going to tell everyone about it. And their passion outweighs like any sort of churchy skill set or technical gifts they may have, right?
Well,
We tend to reward technical gifts in the church.
Why does Youth Sunday always work? Like it shouldn't. It should not work ever. Ever, 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 ever. And instead it always, always, always does. Because it's the intentional turning over of power. Where's the power in the Great British Baking Show Holiday Edition if there's no eliminations? What does it mean? Let's breach universalism for just 1 second. What does it mean if everyone gets to stay in to the end?
And is that grace forward? I mean, is that like leading with grace rather than leading with community rather than leading with self? I think that there's something, I mean, I think you saw joy, to kind of bring it back to what this week, you know, this week's Advent theme. I experienced real joy in, and I'm forgetting his name as well, but the one who came in, he was like, he didn't know how to make a custard. I think it was his custard that he was like, I didn't do it. And then like got in and it was like the technical winner for custard. And I was like, I'm so happy for you. Like, I don't know you. I forgot that you were a contestant because you were on a show a couple of years ago. You haven't been, he wasn't like in the last 2 seasons, you know, which are in my most recent memory. And I was just like, I found myself hoping and excited for him, that happened. And so I don't know what's happening to Arthur. But for me, I think that like, when there is no competition, that this grace forward, that we're leading with community rather than self, because there isn't that kind of end. I don't know. What do you think, Cara?
That's kind of like when Arthur asks, like, where is the power? I would say it's in the community, that the community essentially holds the power when there's like the like not lack of competition, because some of them really did want to win the holiday championship or the holiday cake plate, but when nobody's getting voted off, right, and it's kind of like a capsule kind of experience, I think the power is in the community. Which is why I like the holiday episodes, because they basically leverage what is so great about the normal seasons, right? Their regular seasons. The best part about it is the community and the camaraderie and the companionship and the civility. I like to use that word because they're just so dang nice to each other. And I think that's kind of where the power lies in this episode, or like in the holiday ones as well. You know, and I also think there's something to be said about like either the liminal or marginal power of redemption. Like there's a lot of, like there is a power in being redeemed in your baking that kind of drives some of those contestants.
Are you a baker, Cara?
I am, because it's exact. I'm an Enneagram 1.
So
it's like exact science.
So I'm an Enneagram 7, and I realized I access 1 when I bake. But I have to do it in such a way that like pie dough knows when you're stressed out, and it will not participate if you are trying to roll it out and you're mad.
I liken my writing to pie dough. You can overwork a piece and it's real tough.
Well, exactly. So like I think you and I both align on like the precision, right? You gotta swoop the measure by weight, not volume.
I also cook too, so I access my 7-ness that way, because I can't tell you any of my recipes for like what I make, because I'm like, I just put the stuff in.
And see, that's funny because like I am so recipe driven when I cook, but I'm also like garlic is to be measured by like cups. Spiff, I'm sorry. Do you bake? Do you cook? I realize I don't know this about you.
I bake. I don't. I do a little bit of both. I don't cook as much anymore. I do appreciate baking though, but I'm always the person that's like, here's a recipe, let me add to it and see how I can make it possibly better.
So my husband, the 3, does that too.
Yeah, that's not surprising.
Yeah.
But one of my next questions, and I think we can just go there. Like, one of my favorite things, one of my favorite memories growing up is that my family has a thing called poitita, which is a family recipe of a kind of a doughish thing that you wrap apples and cinnamon and then you put it in a cast iron skillet and bake it, and it's very lovely. But the thing I like most about it is that it can't be done with one person. It's one of the things I grieve being alone in these holiday seasons, is that I don't get to make it because I can't do it by myself, because it takes many people to you have your dough and you put it on a bed sheet on the table, and you put some flour down, and everyone starts from the middle and rolls it out until it is the size of a table and you can see through it. It's got that window paneness. And so and I have these really wonderful memories of my family doing that together at the holiday time and things like that. And so one of my questions, I guess, to either of you is like, what is the thing that you like to bake? Like, what's that kind of nostalgic bake for you? And two, what's your best bake?
I like that. There's no, it's joy. We're actually just talking about things we like. Cara, would you care to go first?
I make some killer blueberry like oatmeal muffins that my family will scarf in an instant. So that's one of my classics at home. And I actually took a recipe and modified it because I didn't like how I wanted to do something different, a little bit healthier. So that is a Gilger family classic. And if I can throw in like this, I would file this in Dairy Girls cooking because they got packaged fondant. I do a French apple tartlet. I don't make the pastry myself. Totally use Pepperidge Farm, but it tastes like the kind that you can get in London or New York, and you can't get like that kind of tasting pastry in Texas. So that's one of my like favorites to bake.
Okay, I'm gonna send you my pie crust recipe because
I know how to make pie crust. If we're going to talk about things that don't give us joy, I come from a long generation of women that bake pies and do it really well. And I know how to do it, and it gives me no joy. So I'm fortunate enough that I have a sister who does love it, and so that family tradition can carry on, and she can teach my kids. But it's not my thing. I can do it.
I just tried to solve a decision you made by considering it a problem without having better context.
It is not a problem for me. Well, it is a problem for the women in my family for whom I have decided that tradition is not for me. I can technically do it. If nobody else can bake a pie in the family, I can do it.
If you're a designated survivor.
Yes, I'm the designated pie survivor.
Survivor. Pie
Yes.
server? Wait.
I would love your recipe. One of the things I love, one of my favorite things I did this year is in my newsletter that I sent out, I mentioned that I have a carrot zucchini bread recipe, and that if anyone wanted it, they could email me. And I had a reader say, you're not supposed to just give out your recipes. You're supposed to swap them. And so they gave me a recipe and I gave them mine, and it was just the sweetest thing ever. So I will take your pie recipe as long as we can like swap.
I'd like your blueberry oatmeal muffin recipe, please, because I got to up my breakfast game.
Yeah. And you can make them the night before and just like serve them up in the morning.
Nice.
Yeah.
To answer your question, Spiff, by the way, strawberry rhubarb pie has kind of become my signature because I've never paid attention to the ratio of strawberry to rhubarb. So it's always a crapshoot, but it always works out.
Are you Midwestern?
Yeah, I'm from St. Louis.
Oh yeah. I just learned something new by like, tell me you're from the Midwest without telling me you're from the Midwest.
Yeah, definitely. But it's and what's funny is I didn't have it till I lived in Texas.
Oh, that's even weirder.
And I'll say that so much of the things that I bake and things that I love to bake now, I learned from church, and specifically being in Texas, that like some of the I served a church in Texas where there were a couple of older woman who had these wonderful recipes for different things, and they were so gracious with their time and would come to like lock-ins and like make breakfast for the kids. And one day I was just like, I need your biscuit recipe because I need biscuit. I don't have one. And so for me, like church has also been a place in which I have kind of cultivated these recipes for not only life, but for actual, sustenance.
And that's actually,
I think that's an important like conversation to have, because I have simultaneously benefited from the communal sharing of recipes at church and tried to kill potluck culture because it is oppressive to young working moms. And so I'm like, I love this culture and this culture doesn't work. So how do we kind of think through how to maintain the really beautiful benefits of a food-centered community without shaming people that that's not what they do?
So I've discovered at the church I'm currently serving, when they would do Wednesday night meals, they would have somebody sign up, but the unspoken rule was you can contribute as you wish. And sometimes you'd announce that you'd contribute, like, oh, okay, I'm going to take care of the salad. And sometimes you'd just show up with the side dish you'd made or not. So it was like it was an informal potluck. No potluck is formal. And that helped. I will also say I served a church in Dallas, Texas, where they would be like, we're having a potluck on Sunday, reply with what you're bringing. And I would always reply to all, that is not a potluck. You need to stop this right now. And I think that's what made them mad at me. I think that's what started it, where I'm like, potluck literally means people should, like, if it's all fried chicken and deviled eggs, we're going to be happy. Don't tell me I need to bring a vegetable side dish. My favorite dish to cook, by the way, is when I became a senior minister, I stopped doing lock-ins, and I will not do lock-ins anymore because no. But I will get up at 5 a.m. and go to the church and make breakfast. That's my favorite thing to prepare.
The church I serve now, I think the thing that happens most is that we comment. I have a lot of really great bakers in my community right now, and so it's always like, when we get together, I'm gonna make this, or I'm gonna make, I've got this oxtail stew that I'm gonna make, and you make it, and it's like, so there's a lot of food brings us together. The meals that Jesus shares biblically are the types that, that's where we're all, and the three of us are disciples, right? So it's like the table is such a key piece of who we are in our theology and in our worshiping practices and things like that. And so I think we miss eating with people, and baking reminds us of eating with people. And so it's a double-edged sword, I think, in this time where it's like, I'm grateful to be able to spend this time and work this dough, and giving thanks for all who made it possible. And yet I deeply grieve being with my community and sharing that time, even if it's a slice of from everything from a wafer or a cracker or a piece of the communion bread, all the way to the full meals of our homecoming celebrations or Christmas or things. So
well, that reminds me of something out of 1 Corinthians. I don't know if you know this, Biff, but I've studied 1 Corinthians in depth this year.
I just got bingo.
But yeah, we're one loaf. And I love that Paul refers to us as the one bread, because it's not, he then goes on to do the body, but like, what does it mean that we are literally people of the table, not just people of the figurative table? I'm missing out.
Yeah, so I mean, I think Great British Baking Show writ large.
We're talking about the Great British Baking Show. I forgot.
But I mean, for me, especially this season, it reminds me how much food is part of my theology and my understanding of how God works in the world and my relationship to God. And one of the things so my favorite is always the technical. So Great British Baking Show has, the 3 sections where there's the challenge, where it's like, make this. And then there's the technical, which is picked by either Prue or Paul. And it's like a very specific thing. I also very much like that sometimes they get great directions, and sometimes it's like, then bake it. And like, there's really
that pistachio rolled Christmas tree thing. I wanted to be like, okay, which one of y'all could actually pull that off? Because I feel like I'm good at technical and like aesthetic, but I think mine would have ended up I mean, none of them did a good job. Like, I think I would have been a mess on that one.
But I also appreciate that in the technical, that you have to put it, but it's a blind test. It's a blind judgment that like, it's not, you don't get to pull out, all feelings aside, it's really about what is there. And I think that that's an interesting kind of reflection of spiritual gifts for each of us, right?
I also think it's a great metaphor for ministry because like oftentimes we're called to do really technical things with like only half the instructions and you just have to kind of figure it out. Like
I've likened it to Apollo 13 where they just dump all of the junk on the table and they're like, build an air filter or the astronauts are going to die. But I guess a technical is more joyful.
It is more joyful. Because in the end, you may end up with a pistachio rolled stacked Christmas tree that's a little to the side or a little brown, but it's still there.
And it still eats good.
It still eats good. Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, like, that's the deal with pie. Even when it's bad, it's still good.
And there's a learning curve. I mean, they're always like, okay, so next time I'll know to do this. You know what I mean? There's also something that's just like fundamental about the growth of the individual, going through that process. And I think that all of us pastors are really experiencing that right now about what does it mean to pastor digitally when we are incarnate people. And we are in a technical challenge right now. Technically, we know how to relate to people. We know how to build community. We know how to do that, but we have been given a script that says, build community, still be God's church, and yet we have no instructions on how to do it other than there is God, there is us, and bake.
Most ministers, though, like a showstopper. Like, let's not be honest, we all aim to like crush it every month or every week on our sermons. And we want to do our best. And I feel like we have a showstopper mentality. And like with the showstopper, you get to incorporate what your strongest things are into it. Like you get to bring that to whatever piece you're doing. And we're all in a technical challenge, even though we were like trained for showstoppers.
Well, so I will tell you, in the last 9 months, I'm a millennial. I hate the phone. I hate talking on the phone. I don't know what to do with my hands, and I can't see people's faces, and it makes me uncomfortable. I've had to get on the phone a lot in the last 9 months. And what's developed at the congregational level right now is there are people who do like talking on the phones and who know everybody, and they're now part of the congregational care team. And pastoral care does not exist anymore at the church. There is congregational care and community care. Because if I get hit by a bus, A, people should like be praying for me, and B, other people should still be cared for. Like I'm not the personal chaplain of 110 people in Wichita, Kansas. I mean 300 because attendance matters so much. Showstopper. It's so how do we encourage ministers to get into the technical mindset, and also I would argue to take themselves less seriously?
Because I will admit, when Cara was like, I'm a tech, I'd be good at the technical. One of the questions we asked on her ID graphic this week was, which one would you be Starbreaker for, right? And she was like technical. And I feel like, and maybe it's my threeness, maybe it's just how I view things, but like I feel like I'm a showstopper. My vision is like I like to do a big showstopper. I'm not great at technical. I would already tell you, like I'm already looking at a technical being like, let's just try and do something different. But I am my best showstopper self when I have gone back to the technical mindset, when I have gone into scripture and said, why do I believe why, like when I set my showstopper mind and vision to cast whatever vision that is, but I root it in something a bit more technical, which in this case for me would be like scripture, right? Like I want to make sure that my people know that that Jesus calls us to keep moving forward regardless of our situation. And, and so I'm going to do this in this big fancy way. But what it comes down to is the fact that I've gone back to scripture and said, this is what, and really internalized, this is what Jesus does. This is what Jesus says. This is what Jesus calls us to do. And I think that we are our best selves as pastors, as people, as community, when we continue with these big visions, when the showstopper is still ahead of us, but we root ourselves in the kind of more minutia, the technical, the thing that says like, these these are the ingredients that you must use to make sure that this comes out this way. And yet the must use, I want to say, is also different for everyone, and it's part of the context. I don't know. How does that read for y'all?
Cara?
Yeah, so I mean, when I think about it, like I'm going to be really honest and vulnerable here. This year was not what I wanted. Like I had plans. I do congregational consulting. I help churches like think about their staff and how to realign them and how to get the right people on board and how to get the people that are on your staff to really shine, like being honest about personalities and gifts and graces. And I had plans for my business, my ministry partners. I have my writing stuff. And this was not the year that I expected. I'm virtually schooling 2 kids. I thought I had handed off lovingly to the public school district several years ago. And I have a partner who is trying to maintain their career, and we're all trying to do it in the same house. And so it feels like a year with no showstoppers, right? In ministry. And I feel like when I talk to our colleagues, like it's hard. This year has been so hard and nobody feels like they're sparkling. Nobody has that Christmas shine. Nobody has that. We all look like we accidentally dumped the flour and it's all over us, right? So, but one of the things that has been really important for me in my spiritual reflection as we head towards the end of the year is thinking about the technical that I picked up and didn't know. And I think that regardless of what you think about showstoppers are really just the bakers leaning into the technical that they have picked up with their passion and know in their heart. And so for me, like you can't have a showstopper without a technical, and technical works best when there's passion behind it. Because like we've all seen some of our colleagues just like really pick up Facebook Live and just shine with it. And we've had other colleagues that have done Zoom and just shine with it. And I think it speaks to passion, and it speaks to the way that our passion allows us to just pick up the technical. And then there's this other part of the technical that's just doing the grunt work and requires discipline. And I think for a group of people whom spiritual discipline is supposed to be part of our vocational work, we're not always great at. We're not always great at sitting down and being like, okay, I don't understand this, so I'm going to sit here and I'm going to Google until I do. But for me, the two always go hand in hand. And I think I have a deeper gratitude for my showstopper moments or my showstopper years when I've slogged through the technical years.
Oof, that's a sermon. That's
Yeah.
a whole sermon right there.
Well, I've developed a better appreciation for the technicals because y'all heard technicals and showstoppers, and I'm the challenge. I have 50 jokes that I'm not going to say perfected because they'll fall flat occasionally, but like, you know, one imitation of me 10 years ago by a youth was, that reminds me of a joke, and still makes me laugh because I thought I was a very good secret smoker. I wasn't.
I know that Arthur.
Yeah,
and I love that Arthur. So
that Arthur was a mess, y'all. Thank you for bearing with me. It's the challenge. You know, you get to know what you're doing, and you get to put your own spin on it, and you get to go in and do it. And I think the technical part, the people who succeed in technicals are the ones who, I've laminated dough before. Oh, I just happen to have worked with this, and I'm really just processing your answer. I don't think I have a question.
I think there's like in baking as well as ministry, I think there is a inherent reward for curiosity as like both spiritual practice and discipline. Because I feel like the people that are good at technical were like, oh, I want to learn how to do, or how do I do that? And did it, because these people are all self-trained. Like they're doing this after work and on the weekends. And so there has to be kind of a natural curiosity that drives them. And I think as people of God, we are always curious what God is up to in our lives and in the world. We're not always as curious as to how to tap into that, or how to do the like hard functioning things of communicating that to other people. Like eventually, I've had to tell clients I've worked with before, I know you hate Facebook, but you still need to Facebook for Jesus, as our colleague Katie Hayes would say. Or I know you don't like TikTok, but maybe you need a TikTok for Jesus, because this isn't about what you like. This is about the technical skills.
Stop it.
I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm not.
You were totally looking into my soul about Instagram.
I really wasn't. I was thinking about how I probably should join TikTok.
I have a TikTok account.
I have one. I just did.
I'm just saying, like, whatever your modality is to connect with your people, you cannot be afraid of it. It's a technical challenge.
Are you familiar with Becca Crevens? Are y'all friends with her?
I do know Becca Crevens. So she's fabulous.
I honestly may post a link to her stuff on the 2-on-1 page. Spiff, do you know Becca? Yeah.
We have met and we are Facebook friends.
Becca was my next door neighbor at Librock Village at Bright Divinity School for a while. And I have a very funny story about a fire drill, which I'm not going to tell right now. And so Becca paints every week. She paints a lectionary image. And watching her progress in style and content and form, making this theological message more clear week after week after week, it's the same idea. It's I guess I guess what I'm pulling out of the technical thing is technical is what happens when practice occurs, or success in technical is when you rely on practice.
Right.
I mean, obviously. So kind of.
Yeah,
but also,
it's more than committing like science, and I mean, because a lot of baking is like understanding chemical reactions. And so it's more than just memorizing that kind of stuff. It is actually kind of putting the work in. And
so it's neither art nor science. It's that in-between thing.
Yeah, because
improv.
They can tell you all the ingredients, but if you put them all in at once, you're not going to get what you're actually trying to get. And so it's about parsing out it's about adding and subtracting the right things at the right time.
And timing is really important.
Yeah.
Like I have a friend on Twitter that totally ruined a roux, because you have to put the ingredients in the right order at the right moment when everything's kind of ready for the next phase, right?
So I make ice cream, and I'm experimenting with that. And I shouldn't make ice cream because I like ice cream a lot. And
that's why I don't.
Weight is not the only indicator of a healthy lifestyle. It's just a number, he says. Making the ice cream, it's when to add the vanilla or the almond extract is fascinating, because there's different schools of thought on it that I've actually gone down rabbit holes about. And you should add it before you start forming the base, or you should add it after it's starting to cool, which is fascinating because they claim that it cooks out it's same idea. Excuse me. I love making ice cream. I'm making peppermint ice cream for Christmas.
And that counts. It counts as baking, because didn't they have to make ice cream?
Yes, there was Bingate with Ian and that lady. Do you remember that? That was the most controversial moment in British television.
And they all
may have left a freezer cracked open, and he threw it away. God, I wish I lived in Britain.
And I appreciate there, and in all of these things you see, especially on the Dairy Girls episode, the one woman made like 3 different cakes when she was trying to make her roll.
The roll, oh yeah.
And I really appreciate. I mean, what I took from that, as I am 2-on-1, has really kind of put me in a focus gear of like looking theologically at everything I'm watching at this point, which has been really lovely. But like I was like, oh, I don't know that I do well the throwing away part and starting again. I try and save things more often than I throw away and start again. And there's a real spiritual practice for me in knowing when to like just to.
She grilled that second cake.
It
could not be rolled because it was still wet on the inside.
Exactly.
When you know. So throw it out.
Do we make space in the church for mistakes like that, for experimentation?
So I feel like the 2 good spies. I have worked at places where you were allowed to make mistakes, like, and it was encouraged. Like, if you're at, I would say particularly at new church starts, like if you've worked in one that has that DNA, there is like the entrepreneurial, like, I worked at a congregation that said, you can try anything once. The only rule is if it doesn't work, do not dare repeat it. And 2, you need to learn something. And I tested the crap out of that because I was straight out of seminary. I didn't know what I was doing. They gave me a brand new program area that hadn't existed to like create and launch. I'm sure all of my successors curse my name for what I tried and failed at, and then tried, and then, you know, kind of got launched. But I have been in church spaces like that. But I would say on the whole, there's a point in the church's life cycle where we do too much conserving of what was and less imagining for what could be.
Word. And you're never going to bake it like Mary Berry did, or Prue or Paul. You have to put your own touch on it. Sorry, I really like your answer, and I'm jealous about the innovation. Fun fact, I followed a certain gentleman at my first church as a student minister, and the first time I met him, I said that they talked about him eschatologically. That he was going to ride forth from the clouds carrying a dodgeball in one hand and the sword of youth ministry in the other. I may have tippled a little bit prior to that. We are coming up on the close of our hour together. Cara, thank you very much for joining us on 2-on-1. As you may be familiar with it, we have a final question. And Spiff, what is that final question that we don't have a theme song for?
Ooh, Travis, yeah, where's that theme song? So yes, Cara, thank you so much for joining us. As you know, the final question is, what biblical theme, book, character, narration, whatever, are you most reminded of in the Great British Baking Show Holiday Edition?
The way I'd ask that question is going, Bible, where?
This is why I asked the final question, knowing our gifts.
Oh gosh, you know what? As a third-time person on this show, I completely forgot about that question.
Do you want me to go and you can think about it? You want to prove it a little? You want to put it in the proofing drawer for just a hot lot?
I would like to put it in the proofing drawer for a second.
Don't open it up too much or it won't rise.
Listen, I rented a house once with one and didn't know what it was and cooked all my baking sheets. Like all my pots and pans down there.
Amazing.
Yeah, my kid is like, wait, that's not for storing like pots and pans in a broiler pan. I was like, nope, that's actually a real thing that we use sometimes. So
that also might sometimes store pots and pans. So.
Yes. So Spiff, what is your answer?
So I named the 4 Sundays in Advent with our 4 hosts. So I said that we're going to start with Paul and Hope, because Paul has these big visions for those technical challenges, but he always talks about them knowing that these people can meet that challenge. And there's a bit of hope that lies in Paul Hollywood with where they want to go. Bless you. Then I want Prue. It offers a little bit of that peace, that she's a little bit more gracious in that space, and that if you were to get a challenge from Prue or Paul, you kind of want to go with Paul or with Prue, because there's a little bit of she offers a little bit of peace. I could have gone Joy there. I kind of vacillated between the two, but I thought Noel brings, and I will say that I went current hosts, and not Mary Berry and not Mel and Sue. I went who was the current host. But Noel is Joy. Noel is the one that comes around and does a little bit of the goofing off and breaks the tension when someone is too in their head, and really helps them achieve this kind of great joy that baking is meant to kind of bring about, which means that I think Sandy is love. Sandy always comes in and is just like, I love so much of what you're doing, and I'm just checking in on you, and I'm just caring for you, and like she just kind of walks around, and I think Sandy is a really underrated part of what the show is right now, because she's just like a kind human that is just like loving and is like comes up and just like makes sure people are okay. Whereas like Noel's kind of knocking things off and like getting them out of their head with some joy. And so, I mean, we could have Enneagrammed them as well, but for me, those were
not supposed to do that.
We're not, and we won't.
But because they're real people. Yes.
Because they're real people. Exactly.
We can do the Muppets sometime.
Ooh. But so that's my answer, is that I put those 4 as the 4 Sundays in Advent because I really found some rootedness there. Arthur? I'm going to just give Cara a little bit more time to prove.
Doesn't mean it's going to be good.
Go both Matthias and Barnabas out of Acts chapter 2. We skip over Matthias's call in this Pentecost season. We do the Ascension, and then we go into Pentecost. And in between, they were like, "Should we have 12? We should probably have 12." Yeah, okay. How do we do this? Let's flip a coin. Matthias, call it in the air. Heads. Hey, look, Matthias is the new apostle. It's really by casting lots. But there's that idea of succession. And the succession is not only the conveyance of recipes and the bringing in of self and baking, but there's also, like, I will admit this. We watched one episode with Noel and Sandy, and I was like, no, I'm a Mary Berry purist, and the holiday edition has helped me go back and say it has to change, because it's not the original disciples. It's not the apostles. It's the continuation. It's the succession. It's the Matthias. And without making room for there to be something new, we will die. And I like the baking show. I will watch anything where people make stuff. I'm watching Lego Masters with my kid, and it's super fun.
Ooh, adding that to the list.
Yeah, it's on Hulu. It's one season.
Okay.
There's an awful couple, but I'm not going to tell you which one. Okay, Proofer, what's up?
All right. I'm going to go, you have spent time in 2 Corinthians. I have been hanging in the Psalms. Ooh. And while there's like some really solid wrath of God business in there and smiting of enemies, there's also a lot of really comforting text. Mm-hmm. And so that's where I'm at with the Great British Baking Show, because I find it so comforting. Mm. Even if they have to bake their, cake roll 3 times, even if they drop stuff on the ground. I cannot believe how many people drop stuff on the ground, which is the equivalence of smiting your own cakes. I think for me, it's just been a really gentle gift in a really anxious time. And so I'm going to go with the Psalms.
Love that. See, you proofed just the right amount. That's a great answer.
Oh, hey,
there were 3 good answers.
It's proof texting based on the Bible, but you get it. It's different because it's hilarious. I could totally take Mel's job. We are coming to the top of the hour, and I want to thank Cara while putting up our graphic for Jeff One Row Designs, who is our lead sponsor on 2-on-1. Whoa, my screen's all wonkety. Do you guys ever have the problem with like a trackpad and never mind. I think I have fat fingers. Spiff. We're coming up on the end of the year, aren't we? Can you tell me who our final guests are going to be in 2020 and maybe
I have them both. So next week we will be joined by Colin McCraney. Sorry, Travis just commented on one of our posts. I was like, Travis.
And, honestly, I sometimes call Colin, who's like my best friend, Travis, who's one of my best friends. They have similarities, always complimentary.
Listen, we're ending the year with our best friends, so there we go. So we have Colin McCraney coming next week, and we're going to talk Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, something that I have not seen.
There's 2, so you just need to be ready for that.
I think we're just doing the 1.
Yeah,
that's really too bad.
Okay.
Well, we'll have him on.
Actually, no, watch the second, because there's literally one joke that will be repeated constantly.
Okay, so
I love the Jurassic Park moment in the second one. Okay, we're not going to steal Colin's joy, though. We're going to let him have this.
Okay.
We're offering him love because it will be the week of love that we won't steal his joy.
So wait, who's coming for Christmas then?
Yeah. And then the week after that, our very final episode of the year, leading into 2021, is with Guthrie Graves Fitzsimmons. And so we are very excited to have Guthrie on, and we will let you know next week what that topic will be as we figure that out.
You mean the author of the recently put out Just Faith, a progressive guide to Christianity?
This one? I do.
Yeah. Reclaiming progressive Christianity. That's what it is.
So so we will have Colin next week and then Guthrie the week after. And so we are very excited. And then our very first show of the year is with a new friend, Ellie of ours, who also just wrote a book, and excited to speak to her. So that is what is coming up.
Well, hey, do us a favor. If you're listening to this via podcast and you haven't subscribed, please do so. Click that button and make sure that our new episodes show up in your podcast feed. If you're watching this online, the best thing you can do to help us is to share and let people know that this is your favorite Disciples-hosted midweek talk show about theology and pop culture. And also make everyone you know watch it. Please buy a stole from Jeff One-Row. We wouldn't recommend it if they weren't fantastic. And this has been 2 on 1. Cara Gilger, thank you very, very much for joining us. You
Thank
can
you.
check out Cara and join her newsletter at caragilger, GILGER.com. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording and all this stuff, but we'll see you next week, everybody.
See you next week.